James Gorey with the Banana Republican. What's going on with the federal takeover of Chicago? Is that next? Looks that way. Baltimore, national troops in LA, or National Guard rather, and now the Pentagon has a plan for Chicago. What the hell's going on? So that's the question of the day. Well, one of the questions. There's a lot of questions these days, but a little while ago I did a podcast where I said literally national police force in all the cities, never. And I still stand by that. But the optics are less cut and dried, put it that way. So let's have a conversation. The fact is that over the past 10, 20 years, there has been a lot of urban crime. Murder rates have skyrocketed in many of the cities, not all of them, but many of them. New York, Chicago, LA, Detroit, Memphis, St. Louis, probably Miami in there, Boston, San Francisco, maybe not all of those, but most of them. And I looked at statistics, and again, depending on how the statistics are written, you get some changes. So there's a little bit of, what do you call it, slicing and dicing of the statistics. But the point is that we know this. Over the past 4 years, millions, tens of millions of immigrants have come into the country. Illegal, unvetted, a lot of criminals, a lot of gangs, a lot of human trafficking, a lot of drug dealing, prostitution, theft, violence, assaults, all that stuff is going on. And all that was brought into the country, or a large percentage of it was brought into the country the past several years under the Biden administration. And there's no arguing that, okay, that's just reality. But is the reaction of the Trump administration the right reaction? It's probably the right reaction, but there has to be some very stringent restrictions on how it's used. Now, for example, we've got tens of millions. Some people say 10 to 20. Some people say 22. I don't know the exact number. I don't know if anyone really does. But let's call it 20 million people came in under Joe Biden. So for all people on the left, you may love Joe Biden, you may hate Donald Trump, but there's no getting around the fact that your guy let in 20 million people. No skills, no language, no vetting, a lot of violence, a lot of babies, a lot of trafficking, a lot of just horrible things. So there's no getting around that. So what should be done about it? So Trump is seeing this and saying, look, let's see if we can get a jump on deporting a lot of these people. I think that's part of it. I read a statistic that a couple 100,000 people have been deported so far, which is a drop in the bucket. Let's say it's 200,000. At 2 million, that's 10%. At 20 million, that's 1%. And so 1% have been deported. Now let's say another 1%, half of a percent, a tenth of a percent have self-deported. I don't know that number. It's hard to find those numbers that are accurate. I don't know what's accurate anymore. It depends on the source, right? So, but some people are deporting. So, but let's say there's 200,000 have been deported. And we're seeing that the lawfare, or the legal side of things, are trying to throw roadblocks in the way of that, obviously. And they're on the left. That's who they are, mostly. And so that's going to be problematic. But the reality is that there are many millions of violent, illegal people in the country that ought not be here. They're straining our social systems, our schools, our medical care, our police force, all these things. It's not good for us. It's not about hating other people. It's about being able to survive and to function. And those systems are put in place for citizens. It's like saying, well, you shouldn't outlaw water. We need water to live. Well, you can also drown in water. So too much water is a bad thing, right? In the wrong place. Kind of like that. So part of me thinks, I hate to see what's going on. I hate the notion of federal law enforcement forces descending upon a city when the circumstances may or may not make it necessary. They probably do make it necessary, given the crime rate of Chicago, which is very high. And by the way, crime rate and murder rates and so forth, those are being distorted for political purposes. They're high. They're really high. In Chicago, Detroit, St. Louis, Memphis, Tennessee, New York, Washington, Baltimore, very high. Now, what Trump did in Washington, D.C. has been working so far. Well, you have troops on the streets, there's going to be less crime. That's pretty evident. Whether that holds out long term, we don't know. There's still criminals out there. What are they doing? Are they just sitting back and waiting for them to leave? Maybe. Maybe they're going to another city. That could be too. So don't know those things. So the argument that, well, Trump has fixed it, yeah, maybe. I hope so. But there are other factors to consider in that. So the point is should federal troops be put to Chicago? And the answer is, I probably think so for a short time, but it's like anything else. There has to be the rule of law, and anytime that rule of law, the exception broaches that rule of law, there's got to be a good reason. For example, your home is your castle. Nobody should be able to come into your house without your permission. But if someone knocks on your door, they know you're home and you're not answering, well, they're going to call the police, and they're going to go in your house and do a welfare check. They're going to, find out if you're still living, if you need help, or whatever. So, and sometimes that's a good thing. So it's not about allowing the federal government to walk all over our rights. God forbid. We don't want that. But when the federal government has already walked all over your rights, our right to safe streets, our right to safe schools, our right to not be carjacked or have our kids or people trafficked or to import drugs into this country. So our right to those things were violated by the federal government when they allowed all these undocumented aliens, all these illegal gang member people from these different countries. That's how I look at it. And so the two rights don't make a wrong, perhaps, but you've got to find a way to get rid of those people, to get them, put them out, get them back, deport them, get them out of the system. And the system will break, by the way. Our deficit, our debt is already at the breaking point with 35, 37 trillion, and probably higher than that, depending on how you count. So there's a method, there's a reason for what Trump is doing economically. There's just a financial economic reason. The system can't handle. And furthermore, all these extra people are illegal. They're driving wages downward. So middle-class people can't make a living because all the cheap labor is here. So there is an economic, there's a legal, there's a cultural, there's a systemic reason for getting these people back where they came from. And again, you can thank the Joe Bidens, that administration, and the media for not really covering it or literally whitewashing it and calling anybody who disagrees with a racist. I mean, if you're called a racist these days, that means you happen to have an opinion, apparently. I mean, everyone's a racist. Mathematics are a racist. 2 + 2 = 4. That's a European concept. Well, yeah, it got us to the moon, right? It got us to where we are so far. So the idea that we can't protect our country, our borders, our culture, our language, our schools, our hospitals, our food supply, our city streets, our kids and our children, our wives, we have to protect these people. We have to protect ourselves. And so part of Trump's method, I think, is to, one, let's go get the gang members. Let's go get the traffickers. Let's go get the drug dealers. People know who they are. Let's get the law enforcement officers back in their jobs and not afraid to do their jobs. But also, I think it sends a message, you better deport, we're going to come grab you. Now, this nonsense with the guy, the Maryland father, what was he, the Maryland man, the Maryland father, this dude from El Salvador, he needs to go away fast. Now, the problem is we have leftist judges, and this isn't like a diatribe against leftist, it kind of sounds like it is, but they're not conservatives, they're not moderates. They're saying, You can't kick out people who came here who broke the law illegally. You can't deport them. Yeah, you can. Obama deported 2 million people. You didn't see anybody raising a stink about that. So the reality is that these people need to go. Whether deploying federal forces into that mix is the right thing to do, it may be the only thing to do. In other words, you're not going to get coordination with Governor Pritzker of Illinois or Brandon Johnson, the mayor of Chicago. You're not going to get their cooperation. And outside of Chicago, most of Illinois is red, I believe. So you're looking at a lot of folks who want this to happen, want some law and order. Without law and order, you don't have society. You don't have a livable society. You have law of the jungle. And that's not good. That may be good for El Salvador. Well, El Salvador's actually got law and order now. But that may be good for these third world countries, but not for us. And that's the problem, is Joe Biden turned our country to a large extent into a third world nation. That's been going on for 30 years. George Bush did the same thing. Both the Bushes did. Bad guys. I voted for both of them. Bad guys. I didn't vote for Obama. And folks who voted for Obama also voted for Trump. So I don't want to go on a tangent too much, but my point in bringing that up is that we're given two choices. And we tend to vote for one or the other, or not at all. Right? That's our third choice. Don't vote at all. Or the fourth choice is write in somebody else. And in those two choices, whether you write in or vote for a third party, it doesn't work. So we're really given two choices. And the fact is that there are bad people on both sides. I'm kind of paraphrasing Trump's good people on both sides. There are bad people on both sides. George Bush was a bad guy. Dick Cheney is a bad guy. George W. Bush, it's a bad guy. That's just how it is. They weren't for America, they were for some globalist, I don't know, some cabal, whatever it is they belong to, that want to see no borders and America disappear and dilute American culture with all these immigrants that don't really give a damn about America. They don't. How can they? They don't. They're here for the handouts, the free rent, the free medical, the free car, the $13,000 on their debit cards. I've seen it. I've talked to them. Yeah, they got a lot of money. Yeah, wearing $200 shoes, like basketball shoes. Are you kidding me? You came from some place in Yemen and you're living in a $300,000 condo? Wow. Okay. I would too. I would be doing the same thing. So in that regard, I don't blame them. I blame our people. And I think Trump has to use federal forces to shock the city, to effectively change the assumptions and the underlying reality of Chicago and these other cities, because their own people won't. Take a different example. Look at Gavin Newsom in California. Highest unemployment rate, highest exit rate of businesses. Is he changing? No, not doing anything. Not going to change. He's the same guy, same policies. That's who he is. So there's going to be no change in California. That's why Trump sent the National Guard in LA to try to calm things down. And Gavin Newsom is suing Trump, and all this is going on. But the reality is, once you understand that under some leaders, under some governors or mayors, things aren't going to change. It's going to be status quo, and they're going to resist law and order and decency and getting rid of these sanctuary cities and getting these people who don't belong here out. They're going to resist that every step of the way. And so I understand Trump's position. I don't like the fact that you have to take this extraordinary step to counter these other extraordinary steps on the other side. If we didn't have sanctuary cities, decriminalizing shoplifting up to $950 in California, decriminalizing assaults, decriminalizing fraud, all these things going on, then, and obviously all the illegal immigrations happen. If we didn't have that, we wouldn't have to go with this. Okay, Trump wouldn't have to go that direction. If we didn't have these governors that perpetuated and that live off of these people, because they're the ones who vote them in, and again, they want to have seats, congressional seats, based on population, not based on citizenship. It's very cut and dried. It's not rocket science here. It's very simple. They know, the left knows they're a dying breed. Nobody likes them anymore because they're so far left. They hate God. They hate masculinity. They hate Christians. They hate Jews. They hate white people. They hate white Christian conservative men. Me, the most. I'm the number one enemy. Oh my gosh. I don't feel like all that bad of a guy, but apparently I'm I'm the worst thing in the world. But so the left hates things American, right? They hate America. They hate our tradition. They hate our culture. They hate our guns. They hate Cracker Barrel, apparently. I mean, they hate Bud Light. They hate farmers. They hate truck drivers. They hate the plumbers and HVAC guys. And, you know, it's so weird, bizarre. So if you're going to undo a country, if you're going to undermine a culture and dilute our national resolve, then all of those things have to go. And the way they go is you bring in tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of other peoples from other parts of the world that have nothing to do with America, no affinity for America except for what they can do, and don't have any interest in assimilating, but rather changing. That's why Sharia law is now being outlawed in places like Texas. Why does it have to be outlawed? Because they're trying to establish it. Okay? That's why it has to be outlawed. So those things are happening. So with Trump and his national force, I get it. I don't like it. There ought to be sunset laws. I think there will be as well. But I think it's a shock to the system. You know, that's very much Trumpian. Trump's approach to a problem is to have, you know, it's like a game, right? If you're playing chess or checkers or whatever it might be, Monopoly, doesn't matter. You've got a board game, right? And rather than try to futz around with the existing pieces, Trump's technique, Trump's strategy is to just flip the board over. Oh, no. Now we got a new board. New game, new pieces. Now we're going to start over and we're going to do it my way. That's what he does. And that's what he's doing now. So I don't think Chicago counted on federal troops coming in. I know that Gavin Newsom can count on it now, and he'll probably see them again if things go bad in LA or San Francisco. But that's what's going on, and I think that's how I look at it. I don't like it. There's got to be a limit to it. I hope it's effective. And again, it hasn't really broken any new ground. As I mentioned in a prior video, Roosevelt interned hundreds of thousands of Japanese, maybe more. I don't know the numbers exactly, but he did that. He did other things. So there were other instances where people have been restricted, people's rights have been violated. In this case, it's mainly non-citizens. And I'm not sure how many rights they have. They don't have a right to be here without consequence. They don't have a right to break our laws without consequence. And they don't have a right to get paid off of our backs and to lower their wage rate without consequence. So there has to be consequences. I don't think Trump is a I don't know, fascist leader in the making. He's going to be 79 or 80 pretty soon. So I don't think he's going to be around that much longer on Earth. But I do think he would like to restore American culture, American values, law and order, and the economy before he leaves. That's my hope. That's my assessment. That's why I voted for him. I could be wrong. It could morph into something else. Or it could be whoever comes after him takes these same actions, makes them much more nefarious, targets them at citizens, and now we have a whole different reality. So I'm aware of that danger, that risk. It's, like I said, it's not something I like, but I do see the necessity of changing the baseline assumptions that have been kind of ingrained in our country over the past few decades, maybe in the past 40 years or so even. That, no, you don't get to just walk in here, have babies, and get paid by the system for 3 or 4 generations, which has happened. And that's not, I'm not talking off the top of my head. I speak with Mexican people who, they're born here, but their parents and grandparents aren't, and they haven't even become citizens still, and they're still getting welfare and Social Security and all that stuff. So That happens. That's a reality too. And that has to change. A nation, a society cannot afford to do that in perpetuity. And in fact, our debt demonstrates just how dangerous it is. So there's all kinds of reasons for doing this. If you can get people out of the country fast, get them off the rolls, get them off the medical rolls, get them off the welfare rolls, get them off that free bank account that came to them under the Biden administration. If you get that stuff done, you're saving money and you're lowering the crime rate, and the wage rate will go up because there'll be fewer illegal workers that are willing to work for peanuts. So there's a lot of good there. There's some risk as well. I think the telling will be in how long these troops stay and what happens after. At some point, the people have to vote in the right leaders who have their best interest in mind, not just creating a supermajority of people who don't speak English, who come from all over the world and don't have don't provide any, don't contribute any good to the country. They're just here and having babies and driving the wage rate down and driving the crime rate up. So it sounds horrible. That's kind of how it works. That's kind of how it's going on right now. And I think that's the long and short of why Trump is having used federal troops, because the state governors are giving such a hard time, and they're not going to change the rules. And he has to change the board. He has to shatter the existing assumptions about how things are done. And I think that's what he's doing. So that's my analysis. If you like you'd like content like this, please subscribe to the Banana Republican, the podcast, and leave a comment. Share, please, and we'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye-bye.